Hello. Today we're going to be talking about the Quad and the Malabar exercise that was held a few days ago, and also examine the strengths of the navies of each of the Quad members and how they compare to the strength of the Chinese Navy. Let's begin. So, uh, first off, about the Quad, I have spoken about them in previous videos. You can see the links to some the most recent videos on the Quad in the screen somewhere. And about the Malabar exercise, it is an exercise that began in the 1990s between India and the US, a naval exercise. In the 2000s and 2010s, other countries joined. Japan, and the latest to join was Australia. And it's a annual exercise with all the four countries, navies, and each country hosts it in a different year. And yeah, I just want to explain how uh, that gives us insights into the navies of each country and how powerful they are, and whether, like, hopefully it doesn't happen, but if there is conflict between the Quad countries and China, how much the Quad countries compare to China's navy. This is the 26th edition of the Malabar exercise and the 30th anniversary. The first one was held in 1992, and India, Japan, the United States, and Australia conducted advanced maritime exercises and drills, culminating on November 15th. In this exercise, uh, the major highlights was the execution of a war at sea, which allowed the Quad navies to strengthen interoperability and hone tactical abilities. The advanced naval exercise witnessed live weapon firing, surface anti air and anti submarine warfare drills, and tactical procedures during the sea phase. Exercise Malabar's sea phase was conducted over a period of 5 days near Yokosuka. In the 26th edition of the exercise, 11 surface ships took part, including a nuclear powered aircraft carrier with integrated air elements. It also involved a Sea Rider exchange between the various participating ships. This was hosted by the Japan Maritime Self Defense Force, which also, and yeah, they basically were, the participating navies were better able to comprehend one another's operational approaches and work together to address a variety of maritime challenges. So let's talk about the navies of each of the countries in the Quad. First, we'll talk about Australia. In number of ships, they have 43 commissioned ships and 4 non commissioned ships. Their personnel is 15,285 permanent personnel and 3,932 non permanent personnel. The number of aircrafts are 44. So we can see that their numbers are not very big, but they are enough for a country like Australia, which is not a very highly populated country, and so naturally the number of personnel will be a little less. And but it's enough to defend Australia. But in order for Australia to participate in the Quad, it would be important for their numbers to increase, not to a great extent, but enough to at least influence the southern Indian Ocean, in, and maybe help Southeast Asian countries which are being harassed by Chinese ships. So this is Japan. They have 154 ships, 50,800 personnel, and 346 aircrafts. This is all pretty good, and since it has a dispute with China, needs more a territorial dispute. It needs more ships, aircrafts, and its population is slightly larger than Australia's, and so naturally it has more personnel, which is good for it. But the number of aircrafts and personnel are good, but the number of ships I think should increase because that will prevent China from getting too close to the Senkaku Islands, which are held by Japan but claimed by China, and it's going to make it difficult for China to get too close to Japan's borders, land borders, if there are more ships in between the two countries. The number of aircrafts are fine, and other than the number of ships, I don't have a problem with Japan. And this is India. Number of ships is 150. Personnel is 67,252 active, 75,000 reserve. Aircrafts are 300. I think that for India, the strength is in number of personnel, which is natural since it has the largest population in the Quad and the second largest on Earth. But this is not proportional to the population; should be much larger. And the number of ships and aircrafts also need to increase. The number of ships should be enough that India can completely prevent China from entering its territorial waters and can also blockade China's access to Pakistan's Gwadar port, the Malacca Straits, and other choke points which China relies on. Number of aircrafts is good, but it needs to be more. So the Navy can fly and attack Chinese ships without getting too close to them, which the ships would have to do. And for the US, the number of ships, there are 290 deployable ships and 190 non-deployable ships. Number of personnel is 3,49,593 active, 1,01,583 reserve, and 2,623 aircraft. So this is clearly the most powerful navy in the Quad, and arguably the most powerful in the world. And this just is what gives the Quad a huge advantage over China. The fact that the US has its navy spread around the world, so it can block China if in the case of a war, it can block Chinese access to any part of the world through its navy. And its aircrafts, this number of aircrafts means it can bomb other China effectively, and even if it loses some aircrafts which are shot down by Chinese aircrafts, there'll be others to replace them. And the personnel is good. There is a very good size for the personnel. I don't think this needs to improve. And yeah, I don't really see any room for improvement in the US except general improvement that all countries need to do for their navies. So the Quad has 831 ships, 6,63,445 personnel, and 3,313 aircrafts. I think in this is so far a decent amount, but it needs to improve. There needs to be at least about, say, 1,500 ships, maybe 5,000 aircrafts, and the number of personnel should increase to about 7 lakh. That would and give the Quad enough numbers, firepower to successfully defeat China. China, the number of ships is 530, the personnel is 300,000, and the aircrafts is 600. So we can see that China has more ships, aircrafts, and personnel than Australia, Japan, and India. But the number of aircrafts and personnel is less than what the US has, but the number of ships is slightly more than what the US has, which is around 400. So China can challenge the US in the seas, but it's still not enough for them to be stronger than the US. And the US, in partnership with the Quad countries, can overpower China. But it's still possible that China could uh, cause heavy losses for some of the weaker Quad countries, such as Australia and Japan, since their personnel is much less than China's, and as is their aircrafts. So, what can we see from all this? We can see that the Malabar exercise is now involving actual war games, which shows that the Quad countries do have some expectation that there might be a war with China in the future. And the fact that they don't have a major ground army based exercise or an aircraft based exercise, but they have only a navy based exercise, shows that they expect this war to be a naval war. Of course, for India, it'll be different with because India has uh, territorial disputes on land with China, and China basically claims Indian land for its own. So I suspect that in the event of a war with China, India would want the other Quad countries to keep China busy on the seas so that some of its efforts and money and time will be spent fighting on the sea while India can defend itself on the land. And also, the other countries would want, in case one of the maritime countries like Japan or Australia are attacked, they would want India with its heavily populated navy to pitch in, which India could do, and uh, especially with blocking the access of China's to oil in from the Middle East and East Africa. So yeah, we can see a lot of stuff happening with the navies of the Quad, and but it must be said that they all need to get stronger. That one on one, it's difficult for them to defeat China, and they are heavily reliant on each other. They need to get to a position where they can defeat China on their own, and so that together they become almost an insurmountable force for China, and China will have to uh, calm down and stop claiming territories of other countries and have to abide by international laws. Not saying these four countries are perfect, but just that they're not the cause of the disputes between them and China. So, yeah, that's it. If you like that video and want to see other videos about the Quad, click on this playlist. If you want to see my previous video, click on this video. If you want to see the sources I use for this video, click the links in the description below. Thank you for watching. Vande Mataram.